Hi guys, how's it going? Laura with Garden Answer. In today's video, I'm going to be putting together this terrarium, and I'm going to be doing it a little bit different than I've put together arrangements like this in the past. So I thought I would bring you guys along and show you my process. So the experimental part of this project today is using hydrostones as my bottom layer. Typically in terrariums, you see 3 or 4 different layers of mediums. You usually see a layer of gravel and then a layer of moss, layer of soil, and then maybe another top dress layer of moss. It's very aesthetically pleasing to look at. I love the way it looks, but I've shied away from using any gravel or stone layer at the bottom of any of my containers in the past because it actually doesn't work like you think it's going to work. It does not aid in drainage. In fact, it can create root rot a lot faster in your plants. So here's how it works. If you've got an enclosed container that you've put soil in from bottom to top and then you've watered in your plants, that water will travel through all the layers of soil down to the very bottom, and that's where your saturated zone will be. That's where the water will pool. So if you add a layer of gravel to the bottom of your pot, you've essentially moved that saturated zone up further. And I know that doesn't make sense. You would think that the water would travel through the soil and then start dripping down into the gravel, but your soil actually acts as a sponge. So when you water that in, your soil is going to soak up all of that water until it cannot hold another drop, and then it will start gradually dripping into the gravel. So you've essentially moved that saturated root zone or that saturated soil up closer to your roots, which can cause root rot a lot faster. So in the past, I put together terrariums where I've made a faux layer of rocks at the bottom because I like the way it looks, where I'll put stones in the bottom and then I'll push them to the sides, and then in the center there'll still be soil going all the way to the bottom so that saturated zone is in the proper place. But these hydrostones are supposed to act different. Now, I don't have any experience with them, and that's why I'm kind of excited for today to see how my plants react. They're actually made of 100% recycled glass, but they're not glass shards. They're more like a pumicey type material, and you can see a bunch of different size of holes in them, which allows them to soak in oxygen and release it to roots and keep roots and plants really happy. So I'm very excited because if I can find something that acts as a layer of rocks and I don't have to do a bunch of finagling to make, my containers work, that makes me happy. So let me talk to you about this container. This is a completely enclosed container. There's no drainage in the bottom. There are 2 air holes, so I guess I can't say it's completely enclosed. And that's one thing I do like about this container is that it allows for airflow, which will keep my plants happier, particularly because I'm using succulents today, not like ferns or something that can handle a lot of moisture that way. So it'll allow for airflow, and it'll keep condensation from forming on the inside of the glass so that you can't see your plants. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do then is add my layer of hydrostones to the bottom of the container. And I might grab just a few more to make sure I have a nice even layer. The next layer is moss, and this is just to keep the soil, my next layer is going to be soil, and it's to keep the soil from going down into the hydrostones and kind of creating a really messy look. So I'm just going to put a nice thin layer of moss in next. This is just called green moss, and it was harvested in forests in the Pacific Northwest. And the next layer is soil, which is just a really fast draining soil mix because I am using succulents in today's arrangement. So now it's time for some plants, and I brought a few different ones out here. I'm not exactly sure which ones I'm going to use, but this is a really good opportunity to use succulent cuttings rather than rooted succulents because my soil layer is not super thick. So let me show you an example. There's an echeveria right here, and you can see it's a cutting. I just took this cutting a while ago, and it's been sitting in a pot just trying to form new roots. So it's a really good idea or a good opportunity to use these because it's something you can just stick right down in the soil, kind of like that, and it'll root and take off and do great. Now, if you don't have or don't want to use succulent cuttings and you've got potted succulents like this, you can totally still use them. In fact, I think this is one I do want to use for a vertical element. This is called a Crassula princess pine. I'm going to take it out of its container and remove most of its roots. I mean soil. I'm going to remove most of the soil and a few of the roots, which is okay, but see that right there? I've just created a lot smaller root ball right there, just a little layer of soil and some good healthy roots. So I'm going to plant that one kind of toward the back here. And I think I'm going to keep this kind of in the green tones here. So the next plant I'm going to use is this Haworthia, really low maintenance plant. These are wonderful, and I love the structure of this. So we've got kind of a ferny texture with the Crassula, and then we've got a really weighty, bold texture with this Haworthia right next to it. And you do have to be careful not to choose plants that are too wide, because I still have to get my glass dome over this whole arrangement. And I have done arrangements in the past where I've done this, I thought was so pretty, beautiful arrangement, and then I go to put my top on and there's no way I can get it over all the plants. So I'm really conscious of that now. And then maybe one of these, which I probably should have done a little looking to see what the name of this was. I'm not sure. I'll try to find the name and put it in the description below. Put that one in right here. Okay, so I think I'm gonna call it good with just these 3 plants right here, and now I'm gonna work on top dressing around them. So I've got a few different kinds of moss, and then I've also got a couple of different cute little fairy garden pieces that I might work in for just a little pop of color. So I've got some mood moss. These are all Super Moss brand. I really like the mood moss, is my very favorite. And then I've got some really bright green kind of soft moss that I think is pretty. And then some river stones, which are kind of this whitish color. Let me see if I can get a couple of them out here. So we've got kind of this really pretty light color that I think will contrast the plants nicely. So I'm just gonna work on kind of top dressing this and make it look nice, and then we'll see if we can get the lid back on. Perfect. And I love the little mushrooms. I think that added quite a lot, and I did leave some of the soil exposed because I like to have that that difference. So I've got the moss, some bigger stones, some soil showing, and it just adds a lot of textural interest. So now the true test is going to be seeing how this thing reacts to the layer of hydrostones at the bottom. I typically water these things with a large syringe, which I have somewhere. Here it is. So I typically water with something like this. You can get these on Amazon. It makes it just really, really handy because you can direct the water right to the root balls of the plant, and you can also control really easily how much water you're giving. So I really like to use succulents in terrariums because they don't need a lot of water. So I can go a long time before I have to water these things. So I'll water them in today, and then I probably will not have to water for another couple of weeks. And that's really nice. So I'll put this in an area that gets really bright light. Of course, you need to keep in mind that if you put this in a direct sun spot, which you would think, you know, if you're using succulents and cacti, you want to put them in direct sun, but when they're under glass, that can really bake the plant. So you want to keep that in mind and keep them away from any really searing sun. So just a really bright spot, maybe a little morning sun, is perfect to run an arrangement like this. So I'll try to keep you guys updated on how this arrangement does, and I'll also try to find links for everything I used in this project today. If you're interested in learning any more about the hydrostones or anything else, check your local garden center first, because they're usually a really great resource for all of these things. That's where I got everything for this project. Actually, we just got in a beautiful load of terrarium supplies, and that's what spurred this project on. It inspired me when I saw the whole display of terrarium items. So anyway, yeah, so I'll try to keep you updated, and thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.